Welcome to my YouTube channel. Hit the like button, share your thoughts, subscribe and tap the bell icon. The sun beat down on the golden sand, but Mariana barely noticed the heat. Her heart raced as she scanned the crowded beach, her eyes searching frantically. The sound of crashing waves blurred into the background. Something was wrong. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but the air felt heavy, charged with tension. She had been a beach waitress for years, but today was different. The usual rhythm of the beach, tourists lounging, children playing, vendors selling ice cream and trinkets, was replaced with an underlying unease. It wasn't the first time she had felt this way. There were days when the tide seemed to carry whispers, when something just didn't sit right. But today, it was different. Today, it was undeniable. Mariana knew this beach like the back of her hand. She had grown up here, watching the waves crash against the shore, listening to the cries of seagulls, and feeling the warm embrace of the sun. But now, it felt as though the air itself was thick with secrets, and she could not shake the feeling that she was walking into something she couldn't escape. She pushed her thoughts aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. The bar was getting busy, and the tourists needed their drinks. As she moved through the throngs of sunbathers and beachgoers, she instinctively wiped her brow, trying to shake the uneasy feeling. But it wouldn't go away. Her eyes caught sight of something, or rather, someone, that made her blood run cold. A man. Standing at the edge of the water, pacing nervously. At first, he didn't stand out. Tourists were common here, and many had the same carefree attitude, ready to dive into the crystal-clear waters or lounge under the umbrellas. But this man? He didn't fit the mold. He was tall, a little over 6 feet, with dark, tousled hair and a crisp white shirt that looked entirely out of place on a beach. His clothes were too formal, too stiff for this humid, sun-soaked paradise. His shoes, polished leather, seemed absurd in the sand, yet he wore them like he had somewhere important to be. Mariana watched him for a moment, her instincts kicking in. She wasn't sure why, but something about him felt off. He kept glancing over his shoulder, his gaze darting nervously. His hand twitched at his side, gripping something that seemed important. Her eyes narrowed, trying to see what he was holding, but he quickly hid it in the folds of his shirt. Her stomach tightened. There was something wrong with this picture. Tourists weren't usually so agitated. She took a step forward, her curiosity pulling her in, but the man's eyes suddenly met hers, and for a brief moment, she felt a strange, almost electric connection. His expression was a mix of fear and urgency, like he had just been caught doing something illegal. Without a word, he looked away, and in an instant, he began to walk, not casually, but with a determined pace, heading toward the dunes. Something in his movement sent a ripple of tension through her body. Mariana had worked here for years, and she had learned to read people's body language. This man was running from something. She hesitated, standing frozen for a moment. Should she let him go? It wasn't her business. But then, her gut twisted. No, she couldn't just let him slip away without knowing what was going on. Something told her this wasn't just another tourist with a strange vibe. There was something more. Her feet moved before her mind had a chance to stop her. She pushed past the sunbathers and vendors, her sandals slapping against the hot sand as she quickened her pace, following the man through the crowd. She couldn't explain why, but every part of her screamed that she had to know what he was up to. She had to follow him. The man's steps were sure, almost frantic as he reached the base of the dunes, a stretch of dry sand that led to a more private part of the beach. The area was usually deserted. People liked to stay near the water, where the breeze was cooler, where the action was. But the man, he headed straight for the dunes, where the shadows seemed to swallow him whole. Mariana's breath quickened. She couldn't let him get away. She picked up the pace, her heart pounding in her chest. As she reached the edge of the dunes, she slowed down, peering around the corner. The man was nowhere to be seen. A strange feeling washed over her. Had she lost him? She was sure he had just walked into the dunes. She glanced around, looking for any sign of him, but there was nothing. The beach was quieter now, the usual hum of tourists replaced by an eerie silence. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw something. A shadow. Quickly, she turned her head. The man was there, standing still, only a few feet from where she was hiding. His face was tense, his eyes wide, his breath shallow. She had no idea how he had managed to sneak up on her, but he was there, staring right at her, like he knew she had been following him. Her pulse raced. For a moment, she stood frozen, caught in the gaze of this stranger. She didn't know whether to run or confront him. He seemed to be weighing his options, his eyes flickering with indecision. I wasn't following you, Mariana stammered, feeling a sudden wave of guilt, though she hadn't done anything wrong. She hadn't meant to make him feel threatened. But the man didn't wait for her to finish. He glanced over his shoulder, checking to see if anyone had seen them, then stepped closer, lowering his voice. You shouldn't have followed me, he said, his words barely a whisper. His accent was thick, hard to place, but it added to the mystery. You don't know what you're getting into. Mariana's eyes widened. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. What was going on? What was he talking about? Before she could ask anything more, the man turned and disappeared into the sand dunes, leaving her alone with more questions than answers. Her body was still frozen in place, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to run after him, demand answers. But a part of her, some deep, primal part, told her to stay put. She was treading into dangerous waters, and no amount of curiosity was worth whatever trouble this man was wrapped up in. As she slowly turned back toward the beach, her foot caught something buried in the sand. It was small, folded. A piece of paper. Her heart skipped a beat as she bent down to pick it up. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the note, her mind racing with possibilities. The message was handwritten in a messy scrawl. If you're reading this, you're already in too deep. Her eyes scanned the words, her mind struggling to make sense of them. Who had written this? And why was she the one to find it? Her thoughts spun as she looked around, half expecting the man to be standing behind her, watching her reaction. But there was no one. Just the sound of the waves crashing against the shore. And then, the sudden sharpness of the next sentence, which made her stomach drop. You will not make it out alive. A chill crept up her spine. She stood there, frozen, the note still in her hand, as her mind raced to comprehend what had just happened. Was this some kind of prank? A warning? Or was it real? Her instincts screamed at her to leave, to forget this whole thing and walk away. But another part of her, the part that had always loved a mystery, wanted to dive deeper, to uncover the truth behind the cryptic message. Who was the man? What did the note mean? And why had he left it for her? Mariana couldn't ignore it. She had to know. She turned to leave the dunes, but just then, a voice startled her. Is everything okay? It was Carla, another waitress, standing just a few feet away. Carla looked concerned, her eyes wide with worry. But something in her expression didn't sit right with Mariana. It wasn't just concern, it was knowing. Mariana quickly shoved the note into her pocket, masking her unease. Yeah, everything's fine, she said, forcing a smile. Just a little out of breath. Carla nodded but didn't move. She seemed to linger a bit longer than necessary, her eyes scanning the area around them. Maybe you should head back to the bar, Carla said, her voice low. There's a storm coming in. A storm? Mariana looked up at the clear sky, confused. The weather had been calm, not a cloud in sight. She hadn't heard any warnings over the beach's loudspeakers. But Carla's tone left no room for argument. "All right," Mariana said hesitantly. "I'll head back." But as she turned, a strange feeling crept up her spine. Carla's eyes followed her too closely. Too intensely. As if she knew something Mariana didn't. Was Carla involved in all of this? Mariana's mind raced as she walked back toward the bar, her thoughts whirling with questions. She had no answers, only a note, a strange man, and a gnawing sense that something was terribly wrong. And the worst part? She had no idea who she could trust. She was in deeper than she could have ever imagined. And there was no going back now. Mariana couldn't shake the feeling that she had just uncovered something far bigger than herself. The note, those cryptic words, had left a gnawing emptiness in her chest. Her mind raced as she moved back toward the beach bar, the warm sun overhead doing little to soothe her nerves. The tourists who had once seemed so carefree now appeared distant, their chatter feeling like background noise to her thoughts. She hadn't seen the man again. He had disappeared into the dunes, and in that instant, the tension had seemed to melt away, but it left behind an unsettling void. The kind of feeling that settled in your bones, one you couldn't quite shake. But the note, those words, "You will not make it out alive," clung to her like a shadow, wrapping around her thoughts, making her heart race with every step. As she approached the bar, she saw Carla standing near the counter, chatting with another waitress. But when Carla turned to meet her gaze, there was a flicker of something in her eyes. It was almost imperceptible, but it was there, a brief flash of recognition. Mariana felt her stomach twist again. She tried to ignore it, chalking it up to nerves. But deep down, she knew something was off. The bar was bustling with activity as usual. The steady rhythm of orders being placed, drinks being made, and customers laughing felt like a distant memory as Mariana tried to focus on the task at hand. She was supposed to be here to serve drinks, not solve a mystery. But it wasn't that simple anymore. Her fingers fumbled as she mixed a cocktail for a customer, the shaking of the shaker feeling uncomfortably loud in her ears. A part of her wanted to go back to the dunes, retrace her steps, and find out where the man had gone. She needed answers. But the other part of her, the part that had grown up in this town, knew better. Some mysteries were better left untouched. Still, as she served another drink, her eyes kept darting back to Carla. The other waitress hadn't taken her gaze off Mariana since she'd walked in. It was subtle, but the unease growing between them was undeniable. "Are you okay?" Carla's voice interrupted her thoughts. Mariana forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired, you know. It's been a long day." Carla nodded, but something about the way she lingered, about the way she kept glancing at the beach, felt strange. "You sure? You look a little distracted." Mariana met Carla's eyes, trying to maintain control of the conversation. "I'm fine, really. Just, a lot going on in my head." Carla seemed to study her for a moment, then looked out toward the sea. "The storm's coming. You'd better finish up soon. I heard it's going to hit harder than expected." Mariana followed her gaze, scanning the horizon. The sky, once a perfect shade of blue, was now slowly turning a dull gray. There was no denying that the weather had shifted, but still, it didn't feel like a typical storm. Something about the way Carla spoke made it seem like there was more to it. Without thinking, Mariana wiped her hands on the apron and asked, "What do you mean by that? Why are you so worried?" Carla's eyes quickly darted toward her, and then back to the horizon. "I've just been hearing things, you know. The storm's supposed to be bad, but there's something else. It's weird. I don't think it's just the weather." "What do you mean?" Mariana pressed, her curiosity outweighing the growing discomfort she felt. Something about Carla's behavior felt almost rehearsed, as if she was trying to hide something. Carla gave a quick, nervous laugh, brushing off the conversation. "Never mind. I'm just being paranoid. You know how it is, things get a little crazy around here sometimes. But Mariana didn't buy it. There was no denying the tension between them, the way Carla's words had a double meaning. She knew the storm wasn't just a storm, not after everything she had already witnessed. And something told her that Carla was connected to it all. A loud crash of thunder echoed in the distance, breaking their conversation and drawing both their attention. The storm had arrived sooner than expected. A thick, heavy cloud cover had rolled in, the air charged with an unnatural energy. The wind picked up, sweeping across the sand and sending a chill through Mariana's spine. Mariana glanced toward the beach, her heart hammering in her chest. The ocean was darkening rapidly, the once inviting turquoise water now swirling with an eerie intensity. But her eyes were drawn to something else. A figure, standing near the edge of the dunes. It was him. The man. Mariana's breath caught in her throat as she locked eyes with him from across the beach. He was facing away from her, but she could see him clearly. He was standing still, his posture rigid as if waiting for something. She couldn't make out any details from this distance, but the same gnawing feeling in her stomach returned. She had to know why he was here. Why he had come back. Without thinking, Mariana grabbed her jacket and dashed out from behind the bar. The storm had already begun to lash at her, the wind stinging her face as she made her way across the sand. Her footsteps were drowned out by the roar of the waves, the thunder that cracked overhead, and the constant gusts of wind that seemed to pick up in intensity. She barely noticed the rain, which had begun to fall in sheets. It wasn't the kind of storm you saw every day, it felt different, urgent, like nature itself was responding to something unnatural. She kept her focus on the man in the distance. He hadn't moved, hadn't turned around. But she could feel his presence like a magnet pulling her forward, drawing her closer. Each step seemed to take more energy, as though the sand itself was trying to keep her from getting closer to him. As she reached the base of the dunes, the wind howled louder. She could barely see through the heavy rain, but she knew she was close. Her eyes never left the man's figure. He was still standing motionless, looking out over the ocean. "What are you waiting for?" Mariana muttered under her breath, her voice barely audible over the storm's fury. And then, without warning, he turned. Slowly, as if he had been waiting for her. "Why are you following me?" His voice was cold, sharp, and distant, carried over by the wind. It took Mariana a moment to process his words. He had known she was coming. She stopped herself, unsure of how to explain. "I don't know. Something's wrong. I feel it. And I need to know what it is." He stared at her for a long moment, his eyes unreadable. The storm raged on around them, but in that moment, everything seemed to fall silent. The air between them was thick with tension, charged with something dark, something dangerous. Finally, he spoke again, his voice low and almost sorrowful. "You're already in too deep, Mariana. You don't know what you're dealing with." Her chest tightened at the mention of her name. How did he know it? She hadn't told him her name. "I don't care," she said, forcing the words past her clenched teeth. "I need to know. Why did you leave that note?" "What do you mean, I won't make it out alive?" The man hesitated, his eyes flickering toward the horizon. A flash of lightning lit up the sky, illuminating his face for just a moment. For the first time, Mariana saw the fear in his eyes. He wasn't just hiding something, he was running from something. "I can't tell you," he said, his voice barely a whisper now, almost drowned by the storm. "But if you're here, it's already too late for both of us." Mariana's heart raced. "What does that mean? What are you talking about?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he turned away from her and began to walk, his steps slow, deliberate, as if he was preparing to leave her behind. But then, he paused. Don't follow me, he warned, his voice barely audible. The storm isn't the only thing coming for us. And with that, he disappeared into the rain and the darkness, leaving Mariana standing in the middle of the dunes, her thoughts swirling as the storm consumed the beach. What had just happened? What was he trying to tell her? But more importantly, who was he running from? And why had he warned her? Mariana had no answers, only more questions, and a terrifying realization that her involvement in this mystery was only just beginning. And she was already in too deep. The rain was relentless. It came down in sheets, drenching everything in its path as the wind whipped through the air with increasing ferocity. Mariana stood on the beach, staring out into the storm as it tore across the horizon. The man was gone, vanished into the darkness. And she was left with more questions than answers. Her mind was a tangled mess of confusion, fear, and disbelief. The warning he had given her echoed in her mind, the storm isn't the only thing coming for us. The words felt like a threat, but there was something deeper in them. Something that unsettled her more than the storm itself. She shivered against the cold, pulling her jacket tighter around her shoulders, but it didn't help. Her body was numb from the rain and the weight of the situation. What had she just heard? What was he trying to tell her? And why had he been so afraid? She had to know more. Without thinking, she turned and began to make her way back toward the beach bar. Her feet sank into the wet sand with each step, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore drowned out by the pounding rain. She barely registered the fact that she was walking alone, completely cut off from the world around her. But it didn't matter anymore. The answers were out there, somewhere, and she was going to find them. As she neared the bar, she saw Carla standing under the awning, looking out at the storm. Her figure was a silhouette against the darkened sky, and she didn't seem to notice Mariana approaching. But as soon as Mariana stepped closer, Carla turned, her face a mixture of concern and something else. Something Mariana couldn't quite place. Mariana? Carla's voice was strained, her eyes flicking nervously toward the horizon. Where have you been? You disappeared out there for ages. Mariana didn't answer right away. She didn't want to tell Carla what had happened, not yet. She needed to process it all first. Instead, she asked, "What's going on here, Carla? What's really happening?" Carla hesitated, glancing toward the door of the bar before stepping closer. "You don't want to get involved in this, Mariana. Trust me." "Why?" Mariana snapped, her frustration bubbling over. "Why are you acting like something's wrong? I know there's something going on. You can't just leave me in the dark." Carla sighed, her eyes darkening with a mixture of fear and guilt. "It's not safe. You have to trust me on this. There are things happening here that you don't understand. Dangerous things." "What kind of things?" Mariana demanded, her heart pounding in her chest. "What is it? What's really going on?" Carla took a deep breath, looking as though she was weighing the decision to tell Mariana the truth. Finally, she spoke in a quiet, urgent voice. "There's a group of people who've been coming to the beach for years. They're not who they seem. They're not just tourists. They're involved in something much bigger than you can imagine. And they don't want anyone getting too close. Especially not you." Mariana felt her stomach lurch at the implication. "What are you talking about? Who are they?" Carla's voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. "They've been here for a long time. Longer than anyone realizes. And they've done things, terrible things. You saw him, didn't you? The man on the beach. The one who left you that note." Mariana nodded slowly, her throat tightening as she remembered the man's words. "It's already too late for both of us." Those words haunted her more with each passing second. "That man," Carla continued, her voice barely audible over the roar of the storm, "he's one of them. He knows too much, and now they're coming for him. They'll come for anyone who gets too close to the truth. Who are they? Mariana asked, the urgency in her voice rising. She needed to know. She couldn't ignore this any longer. Carla took a step back, her face pale. I can't tell you everything. But I can tell you this, you've crossed a line. And you're not going to be able to turn back. Whatever happens next, it's already started. Mariana felt a chill run down her spine. She didn't know what to make of what Carla had just said. But there was one thing she knew for sure, she couldn't let this go. Not now. She turned and walked into the bar, her mind racing. Carla followed her inside, but her presence was more like a shadow, an uneasy weight that hung in the air. The storm outside raged on, but inside, the bar was relatively calm, with a few tourists huddled together, chatting softly over drinks. Mariana couldn't focus on any of it. Her thoughts were consumed with what Carla had told her. She had to know more. There had to be more to this story. She couldn't just walk away from it. Not when she was so close. As she reached the counter, she spotted one of the regulars, an older man named Carlos, sitting in his usual spot. He was watching the storm through the window, his face drawn and tired. Carlos had been a fixture at the bar for years, a quiet man who rarely spoke to anyone, but Mariana had always thought of him as a source of local knowledge. If anyone knew anything about the strange happenings on this beach, it was him. She walked over to him and sat down beside him, trying to keep her voice steady. Carlos, I need to ask you something. You've lived here for a long time. You must know something about the people who come here. The ones who don't seem like regular tourists. Carlos glanced at her, his eyes narrowing slightly. What's this about, Nina? Mariana hesitated. She wasn't sure how much to reveal, but she knew she couldn't hold back. There's something going on here. Something dangerous. I need to know what you know about them. The people who come here, the ones who don't belong. Who are they? Carlos studied her for a moment, his face unreadable. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. You're asking the wrong questions, Mariana. You don't want to know the answers. Trust me. But Mariana couldn't stop herself. I have to know. It's too late to turn back. Carlos sighed deeply, his eyes flicking nervously toward the door. Fine. But you'd better be prepared for what comes next. He leaned back in his chair and began to speak in a low, gravelly voice. They're not just tourists. They've been coming to this beach for decades, and they've done more than just visit. They've been involved in everything: drugs, money laundering, human trafficking. You name it. They've left a trail of destruction in their wake. But the worst part is, they've been using this beach for something much worse. Mariana's heart raced. What do you mean? Carlos leaned in even closer, his voice barely a whisper. They've been using it for rituals. Dark rituals. Things that you wouldn't believe unless you saw it for yourself. And the man you saw on the beach? He's one of the few who's tried to stop them. But he's too late. They're already here, and they're coming for you next. The weight of his words hit her like a punch in the gut. Mariana didn't know what to say. She had no idea how to process what Carlos had just told her. But one thing was certain. The stakes had just been raised. She wasn't just dealing with a few strange tourists. She was in the middle of something far more dangerous, something far darker than she had ever imagined. And she had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went. Carlos stood up, his expression grim. You need to leave, Nina. Now. Before they find you. But it was too late for that. The storm was already here. And so were they. Mariana had no choice but to confront the truth. She was in this now, whether she liked it or not. The air was thick with tension as Mariana stepped out into the downpour. The storm had not abated, if anything, it had only grown more violent. The waves now seemed more like towering giants than the gentle hum of the ocean she had come to know. The beach was no longer the serene place she had first arrived at, it had become a battleground. And she was standing right in the middle of it. Carlos's warning echoed in her mind, "You need to leave, Nina. Now. Before they find you." But leaving wasn't an option anymore. Not with everything she had learned. She had already seen too much, heard too much. Now, the question wasn't whether she could escape. The question was how to survive. As the wind howled and the rain lashed against her face, Mariana walked with a purpose. Her steps were steady, each one bringing her closer to the truth, no matter how terrifying it had become. She had to find the man. The one who had vanished into the storm and left behind the cryptic warning. She had to know who he was, what he had meant, and why he had spoken those chilling words to her. But first, she needed to find out just how far the danger had reached. She turned back toward the beach bar, her thoughts spinning in a whirlpool of confusion and fear. What was she even looking for? Evidence? Answers? Something to explain the nightmare that had slowly unraveled in front of her? The answers were slipping through her fingers, like water. Each time she thought she was close, she found herself falling deeper into a labyrinth of mystery and danger. The bar had emptied out. The few remaining tourists were huddled in small groups, talking in hushed voices, but the atmosphere was different now. Mariana could feel it in the air, something had shifted. There was no longer any casual chatter, no easy laughter. The place felt heavy, as if it too was waiting for something to happen. She moved quickly, her pulse quickening. She needed to speak to Carla again. There was no time to waste. Inside, Carla was cleaning glasses behind the bar, her hands moving mechanically, but her eyes darting nervously from one corner to another. When she saw Mariana approach, her expression hardened, but she didn't speak. Mariana took a deep breath and steadied herself. She had come this far, she wasn't going to back down now. "What is happening here, Carla?" Mariana demanded, her voice urgent but steady. "What is the truth?" Carla hesitated, her hands pausing mid-action. "I told you, you need to leave. Now. They're looking for you." "I'm not leaving," Mariana replied, shaking her head. "I need to know everything." Carla looked around quickly, as if expecting someone to be listening. She then leaned in closer to Mariana, lowering her voice to a whisper. "All right. But after this, you need to leave. They will come for you." Mariana nodded, her heart pounding. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The truth was about to unfold. "There's a reason these people come here," Carla began, her voice trembling. "They've been coming here for decades. They call themselves the Watchers. They've infiltrated every aspect of this place. The government, the businesses, the locals, they have eyes everywhere. And they're involved in more than just illegal activities. They're part of something much bigger. Something dangerous." Mariana's stomach tightened. "What do you mean? What is it they're after?" Carla took a deep breath, her face pale as she spoke. "Power. Control. But it's more than just money. They've been searching for something ancient. It's hidden here, on this beach, under the very sand you've walked on. They believe it's the key to unlocking something unimaginable. A power that could change everything." Mariana felt her world shift under her feet. "What is it? What are they looking for?" Carla hesitated for a moment, glancing nervously toward the door. "I don't know exactly. But I know it's something dark. Something that's been buried here for centuries. And the man you saw on the beach, the one who tried to warn you, he was trying to stop them. He knew too much, and now they're after him. Mariana took a step back, the weight of the information settling heavily on her. The beach, the storm, the cryptic messages, it was all part of something much larger. The man's warning made sense now. It's already too late for both of us. He wasn't just speaking about the storm. He was speaking about something far worse. You have to leave, Mariana, Carla said again, her voice trembling. Please, just go. Before they find you. But it was already too late. Mariana had already crossed the point of no return. The answers she sought were right here. She could feel it in her bones. No, she said firmly. I'm not running anymore. I need to know where they're hiding it. Where are they keeping it? Carla's eyes widened with fear, but she didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked around the bar once more, as if contemplating whether to speak or stay silent. Finally, she leaned in, her face shadowed with worry. They're not just hiding it anywhere, she whispered. It's here. Right beneath us. The words hit Mariana like a punch to the gut. Beneath them. The realization came crashing down in an instant. The bar. The beach. The very ground they stood on. Everything was connected. The mystery, the danger, the storm, it all led to this. What do you mean? Mariana whispered, her voice barely audible. Carla stood up straight and took a step back. They've been digging. Slowly, quietly. Every few months, they make progress, and they've been hiding it from everyone. But I've seen them. I know what they're doing. Mariana's heart raced. What are they looking for? Carla took a deep breath, her hands shaking. They're after a relic. An ancient artifact. It's not just valuable, it's powerful. Whoever controls it controls everything. And they'll stop at nothing to find it. For a moment, silence hung between them. Mariana felt the weight of Carla's words sinking in. The storm outside had nothing on the storm inside her heart. She wasn't sure how much of what Carla said was truth, but she knew one thing, the danger wasn't just on the horizon, it was here. Right beneath their feet. Where are they hiding it? Mariana asked again, urgency creeping into her voice. Carla hesitated before answering. The caves. The ones near the cliffs. That's where they've been digging. You can't go there alone, Mariana. It's too dangerous. But Mariana wasn't about to back down. The storm outside had nothing on the storm inside her. She had to see it for herself. I'm going, she said, her voice firm. No, Carla protested. You can't. Please. But Mariana had already turned and was walking toward the door. The storm was still raging outside, but the real storm, the one that had been brewing for so long, was about to come to a head. She made her way to the cliffs, her footsteps lost in the roar of the wind and the waves. The caves were hidden beneath the towering rocks, but she knew exactly where to look. The sense of danger was palpable in the air, but the urgency within her was even stronger. She approached the entrance to the cave, her heart pounding in her chest. And as she stepped inside, the air grew colder. The darkness swallowed her, but she didn't hesitate. She moved forward, one step at a time, guided only by the faint light from the storm outside. The deeper she went, the more the ground seemed to tremble beneath her feet. She could feel it now, the power, the presence. It was real. And it was close. Suddenly, a flicker of light appeared in the distance. She hurried toward it, her pulse quickening. When she reached the source of the light, her eyes widened in disbelief. There, in the center of the cave, stood the artifact. It was glowing faintly, casting an eerie light across the cavern. And standing before it was a man, the man from the beach. He turned when he saw her, his expression grim. You shouldn't have come, he said softly, his voice filled with regret. But it was too late for regrets. The truth was here, and there was no turning back now.